What is going on, folks? We are live from SEC Media Days Day 1 here right now on Radio Row. Yours truly, Boots on the Ground. I'm joined by Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson. We went back and forth, admittedly, guys. Should we wait until end of week and do one big recap? Should we go day by day? We're here to make content, guys. Content bleeding out of the eyeballs, and we had 4 great coaches. We had tons of great players. An electric day here in Dallas, Texas. Figured why not? The more the merrier. So here we are. Guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Check us out via YouTube. Check us out via podcast. Also follow across all social media platforms as well. And, of course, our website, secunfiltered.com, to stay up to date with all of our latest content. Want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at MyBookie. MyBookie is actually sponsoring our trip to Dallas, Texas for SEC Media Days. Check them out, mybookie.ag. Promo code SECU and sign it to get your special welcome offer on your first deposit. And mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get that special welcome offer today. Like I mentioned, I am Chris Phillips, live from SEC Media Days, Day 1 here on this July 15th. I'm joined, as always, my good friends, my co-hosts, my colleagues, Dave Shumate, whose face you've seen a lot of today, and Cole Thompson, very similarly as well. He's been all over the place. What's going on, guys? Appreciate y'all taking the time.
What's going on, Chris? How's everything going? So was that Brunswick stew you sent me and Cole earlier?
I think it was Brunswick stew. Yes, I think it was.
What do you give the lunch 1 through 10? 10 being the best meal you've ever had.
The Texas chili was also really good. The Texas chili was phenomenal. I'll give it a 7.6.
Did it have beans?
It had beans, yes.
Oh, God, yes. It's not chili then. I don't care.
Oh, no. Excuse me. No, so this was real chili. I meant there was baked beans as a side. No, there were no
thank
beans
God. I was just saying.
The chili. Okay, I was confused. That's my bad.
You put beans in your chili, automatically it's not Texan. It's not great food. It's just slop. It's not anything. Bro, we don't do beans in chili. That is a common household rule just in society, people. It's not just in Texas.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Guys, let's go ahead and dive into it again. We had 4 great coaches today. We'll start right off the top. Or maybe we should start with Greg Sankey, right? The CEO, the boss, the head man of the SEC. We'll start with Dave and then go to Cole. What did you guys make of his comments? The big thing that jumped out, and again, Cole did a great piece on this morning, seemed pretty content at staying at 16. And we've had this conversation this afternoon here. Can the SEC still be the best conference in the land, staying at 16 teams? I think obviously speaking on this because of the whole Florida State Clemson thing going on right now. What say you? I think they can be. Your overall thoughts on Greg Sankey's comments regarding expansion or maybe lack thereof moving forward?
Yeah, the 2 key points, again, I thought Cole did a phenomenal job. Cole got me through my lunch with that video. So I was watching that. Cole, I think, hit on a lot of points. So anybody who hadn't gone and watched that, I encourage you to go watch Cole Thompson's video there. But initially, a lot of stuff echoing what Cole said. I think the 16 team sounds like he's pretty locked in. What do you say? The exact quote, we're 16 today, 16 tomorrow. Like that's been hit on a lot. That sounds real. I mean, would y'all agree if like the next teams that would be in there would be the Clemson, North Carolina's, Florida States of the world would be those next few teams, maybe Virginia Tech, Virginia. He mentioned he likes how the Southeastern Conference still can ring true to their name to some extent. Yeah. I mean,
I think his quote was, "Our name still means something."
Still means something.
So drop the mic, Sankey-esque.
Yeah, any conference with freaking numbers next to their name has already shot themselves in the foot. So.
The numbers don't even match.
Yeah.
But before I know we've been hit on the expansion. The one thing I did notice, and I thought Connor O'Gara asked a hell of a question because I feel like I've been asking it. We've talked about it some on our shows. Is the tiebreakers or the lack thereof an announcement of one? I feel like after the head, like you could legitimately get in. I see Cole predicted Ole Miss to go to the SEC championship. Could certainly see that. But what if that game against the round robin of Georgia, Texas, and Ole Miss? What if both teams go? What if Texas and Ole Miss tie and they both went over against Georgia? What's next? Who's the highest team in the college football playoff ranking? I feel like I want to know that. I went off last year's tiebreakers, how I did mine. I had a 5-way tie, just like Phil still did. I think that was out there. But that was one of the more takeaways. Like, man, they didn't come up with a tiebreaker. They have. It sounds like they're in discussion. What do you say? About 8 different
scenarios or something like that. Yeah.
But nothing official. So that's really stood out to me outside of the obvious of sounds like we're going to be at 16 for a bit.
Greg Sankey basically said, you're catching up to us, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. Shut up and don't go ahead and ask us why we have to add in teams, because if they don't. when you think about the two teams that they added in, number one, they come with financial resources that blow almost everyone out the wazoo. Even a place like Oregon that has Phil Knight money, it's still nowhere near what Texas and Oklahoma have been for decades on end because of their boosters and what the collectives have been able to build over the last few years. But also, the geographical location is a big deal. Greg Sankey didn't mince words when he went and called out Jim Phillips and Tony Petitti for reaching beyond and above. I'm not going to say that you can go that far with a guy such as guys such as God, why am I blanking right now? Big 12. Why am I blanking?
Is it Juracek?
Brett Yormark. Yeah, Brett Yormark.
And
it's I can't believe I blanked on that for a second. God, my brain went freaking white for a moment. Anyways, the Big 12 has always been that way. Like, you can just go back to when Bob Bowlesby was starting to go target teams.
There forever.
We got West Virginia. Like, this is not uncommon. But the other two, they went for a money grab. And what was the reasoning behind it? Because they wanted to compete alongside with the SEC, knowing that they just added in Texas and Oklahoma. So geographically, it makes a lot of sense. Financially, it makes a lot of sense. Unless you feel like right now you are going to be shafted in the college football playoff, which we're already hearing about the speculation when 2026 rolls around and we would move to 14 teams. I don't know why we're doing that to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. With you're now being penalized for adding in those 9 conference games, well, then you get to have that conversation of, do we expand for more representation? But as of this moment, there's a very good shot that the SEC is the one conference that gets the most representation year in and year out. The teams that they have in are financially stable to where they'll bring in a revenue that doesn't even come close to even dwindling, where you have the Big 10 and the Big 12 and the ACC having to make those moves. They can be the best program in the SEC because they're the standard and they're selective on who they target. You know, it's nothing against Washington or UCLA or USC, but the Big 10 had to go after those teams. They chose to go after Texas and Oklahoma and Texas were more than happy to go ahead and hitch their wagon to the future of what is the conference that just means more.
So, guys, let's dive into, again, these 4 coaches that spoke. We'll start with Brian Kelly, who kicked it off this morning of the LSU Tigers. First things first, did you guys see the picture of Brian Kelly on the back of the mechanical bull? Did y'all seem to catch that?
Yes.
I doubt we get a better picture all week long, by the way. If you guys haven't seen it, check out our timeline. It is. So, on that note, though, guys, let me ask you this. Brian Kelly, you know, from the jump, which I guess this shouldn't matter, the whole culture fit question, it came up, right? The whole family, the whole accent thing, fake accent. You win the SEC West in year 1, who cares? Last year, you're 9-3 with a historically bad defense. Year 3, fairly unfairly, is the year where you're deemed, are you going to pop or are you not? This is who you really are. How much pressure? I feel like, you know, we talk about the college ball playoff and the beauty of a 12-team playoff. And I think one of the beauties is teams like LSU, Tennessee, Missouri, maybe even Ole Miss this year. In years past, hey, nice 9 or 10 win team. That's kind of where we stop the conversation. Maybe they'll go to a nice bowl game. That's where we stop the conversation. Now we're talking about them making a playoff. On the flip side, though, guys, what doesn't get talked about enough, it adds another layer of pressure to these coaches. And at a place like LSU, they're going to expect to make the playoff more often than they don't. And if they don't make the playoff this year, I feel like some of that, kind of the stuff that makes Brian Kelly who he is, it's going to come off as corny and annoying more than it's just Brian Kelly being Brian Kelly. Your thoughts, Dave, we'll start with you. I know you did a whole reaction video already, but, you know, quickly, thoughts on Brian Kelly, what he had to say at the podium. I thought at least the good thing he did, he faced yet last year's issues head on. Listen, we weren't balanced as a football team. We were bad on defense. We know that. I know there were some things you wish he would have answered about the defensive tackle spot specifically. But, I mean, listen, it sounds like with Kelly, he faced those issues head on. You got to kind of read between the lines to get any more of that out of him. But the pressure's on for Brian Kelly. There's no question.
Well, I think Brian Kelly, going into year 1 said, judge me on year 3. And those people in Louisiana hadn't really forgotten about that. Yeah. So I think you can't really call your shot and see. And again, I kind of think today made me feel a little better about them. I usually don't get that way about that. Again, I feel like same spot. I think just me personally, I think they're 9-3, 8-4-ish type team. He said they're deeper across from a top to bottom standpoint. I mean, there's no way he actually believes that in the interior defense tackle in the secondary. But across the offensive line, he mentioned it receivers. They're not going to have the star power. I do think they're pretty deep at receiver, though. I don't think they're going to have a dude like Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. out there. I don't even have anybody like that. They're not claiming to have anybody like that. Running back room serviceable. I just think the misses early on in his tenure in his first 2 years at the defensive line spot is going to catch up to them this year, where it will be more of a – it's weird to say a rebuilding year for someone in year 3. It says judge me on year 3. But I do think, like I mentioned on social media today, I think hiring Blake Baker, Bo Davis, Coach Peoples, a lot of those Missouri coaches, those 3 Missouri coaches that came over, plus Bo Davis, like I mentioned, will save his tenure. I think this year they can only be better on defense. I was listening to the SEC Network. It's like, well, what if they're improved? It's like, I mean, they're going to have to be. I can imagine it being worse. But again, Blake Baker's in a decent spot. Like, I think he's one of the better spots from a perception standpoint, because one year I was at UCF. That was the year after Heupel left. And they went to Tennessee. They had Randy Shannon as his defensive coordinator. They finished 126 in defense. Travis Williams was our DC, who's the DC now at Arkansas. We finished like 80th, but the guy was reigned like he was a hero, because that was a massive increase, but you could only be better. I think Blake Baker's going to be similar in that mold, but I think in the next 2 to 3 years after that, they get recruiting on the same page. It's not just the Frank Wilson show. They're going to be better off for it. So I think that hire in about 4 to 5 years when we're looking at it, it's going to be, man, that probably saved Brian Kelly's tenure.
And Cole, before I kick it over to you, I think what's interesting is Dave just pointed out that Brian Kelly said, judge me on year 3. And then I heard him today say, when he was asked about expectations, well, I don't really look at expectations. I'm more of, trusting the process. And it's like you can't have both those things, right? Like you set the standard and the expectation, like this is the year. To your point, like you cannot go 8-4 and say, well, we're just in the midst of the process. I don't think that's going to bode well.
No, you can trust the process, but the process says at this point, it's year 3. You better be progressing towards a national championship. That's the way that I view it, and the way that I think most in Baton Rouge believe it. And unlike most people, Dave specifically, I do believe that this defense can be actually pretty special, because sometimes you have to look at the grander picture, whether it is you get the player or you get the person. And in my opinion, the personnel that they added in, headlined by Blake Baker, brought in with Bo Davis, who, if everyone remembers, and if you forgot, let's just go back to 2021. There's a video that's currently on YouTube of fans of Texas players getting their asses reamed after an Iowa State loss. Don't think that's not going to happen down in Louisiana, of all places. Bo Davis is going to whip these asses into shape, and he's going to make sure that they are well prepared week in and week out. But I really think that is going to be the big deal is for Brian Kelly and this team, where do you find that X factor? Is it on defense? Is it going to be your offensive line, opening up creases, protecting Garrett Nussmeier, who, once again, I don't believe in the notion of winning the podium, but my God, do you not want to run through a wall when that kid talks? Like, he is legitimately everything that I want in a thoroughbred franchise quarterback, college quarterback, from nonstop finish, top to bottom. But if I get protection for him and I can run the football and my offense can still be substantial, maybe it's not the same numbers as we saw last year with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, but you still have Kyron Lacey that had 7 touchdowns last year. On top of that, you bring over CJ Daniels and a name that everyone's forgetting about, Xavier Thomas, the fireball from Mississippi State. You got a good run game. If you take away 10 points from that scoring offense last year, but then you also take away 10 points allowed on defense, why can't this team be right back in the conversation for 10 wins? Here's the problem, and this is where it goes all back to what Dave said from the get-go with Greg Sankey. How do we determine tiebreakers? Because of a 10-win season may not be enough in the SEC to guarantee you a spot in the playoff, like it will in the Big Ten, where a Penn State gets in, or maybe a Michigan gets in, because there will be a lot of teams at 10 wins. And as 10 wins, kind of how we talk about right now in Columbus, you keep losing to Michigan. Is 10 wins good enough for you to feel confident with Brian Kelly as your head coach? I personally think he's the second best coach in college football. I think he's the second best coach in the SEC, only behind the guy that's one of 3 national championship winners. But at the same time, is 10 wins good enough for Scott Strickland and for those that are paying the checks down in Baton Rouge?
So, guys, let's move to Shane Beamer, who followed up Brian Kelly. 17 minutes was his opening statement in the big room. 17 minutes. He has a 30-minute time allotment. He used 17 of them to sell everything from GPA and graduation rates to recruiting to beating Tennessee and Clemson in 2022 to his overall tenure and what they're doing in this year's football team and where the media he believes is going to pick them. And guys, your thoughts on that? I've mentioned before that there are coaches who have little to nothing to gain, some to gain, and a lot to gain from an event like this. And I think if you're a coach who you're feeling the pressure, you're coming off a bad year, your seat is warming, or you're on the hot seat like a Pittman or Napier, this is a great opportunity for you because, guys, you know as well as I do, when you're winning a bunch of games, midweek press conferences, post-game pressers, they don't really mean a whole lot, right? Like, as long as you're winning, everything else is taken care of. When you're not winning, though, it's funny how those kind of things are nitpicked and you're picked apart for what you said in the Tuesday presser or the presser after the loss or whatever. I feel like that was Shane Beamer taking advantage of his opportunity to, I'm going to sell the crap out of myself, what we're building in Columbia, try to reassure and build back some goodwill. And there's nothing you can do here, right? You're not winning or losing games at the podium, but stuff like this matters when you're a coach like Shane Beamer, where your seat is warming. And I think he understands that, guys. Shane Beamer's as self-aware as anybody out here. He reads everything on social media. He might be tuning into the show right now. I have no idea.
I hope he is. I do.
He's consuming this content. He knows what people are saying about him. He's literally up there saying, listen, I know what you guys are saying about us. You're going to pick us to finish 13th or 14th, and that's fine. I like our team. It is what it is. So I think it was a coach that's feeling the pressure, feeling the heat. He understands the seat is warming up, and he took advantage of that opportunity, 17 minutes of it, to sell every little bit he could of why he's the right guy for South Carolina, essentially. Did y'all get the same vibe from Beamer today?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I was a CEO or a president of a company, he'd be selling internet software, medical sales. I'd want to be selling. I mean, my guys would be the greatest human beings, the best husbands, which is awesome. You need that. He's a growing young man. But it was almost like he was and maybe this is just me looking into it, almost taking up the time to avoid questions. I don't know if that was a little bit of a strategy there, a little chestnut checkers move, but I thought he hit on some good stuff. I mean, the stuff I was really interested in that I took to note that I mentioned on the instant reaction, just the coaching addition and subtraction. I think we never talk, and again, I'm guilty of this too. Everybody's guilty of it. We don't talk special teams in the offseason. It's not cool. Like, nobody's really talking about the kicker. Lane Kiffin mentioned Caden Davis is a baller. Dude, probably the most in-shape kicker too. He's got guns. They're going to be good at kicker too. Alabama bringing in the Miami, Ohio kid. That's going to be massive.
Bama being good at kicker and Nick Saban not being on the sideline, and Mike Shula, who a lot of folks learned today, going to be in Tuscaloosa. College football is backwards in 2020. It's weird. It makes no sense.
But I think them losing Pete Limbo could be a legit. We'll see. I mean, he was one of the better special teams coordinators in the country. I mean, granted, Shane Beamer comes from a lineage of caring about special teams, Beamer ball, but Limbo was one of the better special teams people in the country. I mean, his resume proves it. Head coach at Buffalo now. He's going offensively. They bring in our guy, Sean Elliott, head coach at Georgia State, was at South Carolina the last time they had success in the run game on the offensive line. I think his title now is tight ends run game coordinator. He's not the offensive line coach. He's going to have an input on that. And then Mike Shula. Mike Shula, good offensive mind. Say what you want about him as the head coach at Alabama. He had some good offenses at Carolina when he was with Cam Newton. Great, he had Cam Newton. But I think you blend in Dow Loggins, their true OC, in that they know they're not dumb. I mean, how many times – I think I looked it up the other day. I think Spencer Rattler threw 35-plus times in a game in half their games last year, which I get it. I mean, he can layer to all three sections of the field, does a good job, has good hand talent. You're going to use Spencer Rattler. Can't be like that with Lenore Sellers. He can't go throw the ball 35-plus times a game. I think they know that. If they can stay healthy on the offensive line, I'll be interested. What I took from that, and this may just be a front, because I think everybody kind of believes in their defense a little bit. They're going to keep them in the game. I came off a little bit more like they really do believe in their offense a little bit. Like, granted, they're internally, they can tell me to go F myself. I'm not that big a believer in it, but that's what really I took home was like, they like themselves on and off the field a little bit offensively.
I think offensive line too, Dave. They believe the licks they took last year up front will help them in the long term, and they very well may be right because those guys have a lot of talent.
It's just ball playing a lot, yeah.
It's just got to come together, and they've got to be healthy moving forward.
It can't be any worse. I mean, let's just start off there. It can't be any worse.
South Carolina offensive line, LSU defense. Can't be
literally
worse.
Cannot be any worse. That should be the slogan inside every weight room during practice. Can't get any worse. And it really shouldn't. When you bring in a 5-star talent like Josiah Thompson that already is probably going to earn starting reps as a freshman, that's a sign of progression. The way that they talk about him so far has been really, really promising. What I find so interesting, and by the way, just throwing this out there, Eli Drinkwitz was paying attention to how long Shane Beamer went, just so he knows I will go 1 second over to win the day because I am that petty of a son of a bitch.
Cole, I had a lot of Oklahoma fans that I posted. I was like, I don't think anybody's going to go longer than Shane Beamer. A lot of Oklahoma fans were reaching out saying, Brent Venables said, hold my beer.
It's going to happen.
17 minutes. I don't know the exact second,
Who
but
was
17
who was the
minutes.
next second closest to that?
I think Clark Lee, and I think that even he was like
he was
9
long,
minutes.
yeah.
I think even he was like
Dude,
9 minutes.
Lane was like 3 minutes, I think. So
Which again, we'll get to that in a moment. But when you talk about a guy like Shane Beamer, number one, I have been higher on him than most. I think I've said before I would run through a brick wall if Shane Beamer asked me to with all the gusto and might. Like, you ever seen the episode of The Office where Dwight goes and takes over the meeting where they're all like trying to decide if we're going to liquidate Dunder Mifflin, and he gets everyone to rally? Like that's Shane Beamer when he's at his peak. He could easily be the most snake oil-led salesman that we have ever seen in all of college football and send Jimbo Fisher packing. Like Jimbo was key at that, but Shane actually gets you to want to believe in him. Like, that's something that I've taken away. But number one, Shane, I have you at 12, so let's get that straight. You are not 13. I have you better than advertised than most. I think that you are an 8-win roster this year. Thank you kindly. Number two, I actually do believe that if there is an offensive identity that can be established, whether it be on the ground with Sellers' legs, with the addition of Raheem Rocket Sanders, and the defense does its job early on against teams like Kentucky in week 2, against the matchup LSU's week 3, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the game? Yeah. So yeah, week 4. If you have those type of games where you keep things close and interesting, that is going to build the charisma that you're talking about, because we right now know that internally there is no doubt in Columbia that Shane's the guy. They have the right personnel, they have the right attack, and they have the right approach. But do they have the right aura that will allow them to believe that type of mentality going into the early stages that will then carry on over into the late games when they can win? I think if they get an upset win or two this upcoming year, they may again be a sleeper. And Shane may be seeing things that we aren't behind closed doors like we have in the past. But the man knows how to make an entrance. I mean, literally yesterday, dropped that whole logo of him playing the video game at Williams-Brice Stadium. How the hell do you not just go, damn, dude, I want to be in your corner?
What was y'all's reaction when Shane Beamer said he felt like South Carolina could be a year-in, year-out college football playoff contender? Did you
It's him selling, baby.
He tried to sell it. He tried to sell it. Yeah,
what are you supposed to say?
I know. I just I was like, okay, all right, we're shooting for the moon here. I get it.
That is one time where it's like, hey, even if you don't believe it, even if you think that you're just completely out of context, no, just say it. Say it. Because you want to know why? Because everyone's going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Hey, what did y'all? Hey, honestly, off topic a little bit. What y'all think was the best question of the day that you can remember?
Say it again, Dave. What was the what?
Best question today that y'all remember off the top of your head? I thought the defensive helmet question communication was good. I forget who said it to Clark Lee. I wanted to hear his thoughts on that. You usually get the offensive guy's opinion on that.
I thought the tablet was interesting. But
yeah.
I thought that was
all I know is Shane Beamer, virtually every question it seemed like he got was about Oklahoma. So that was sort of
also real fast before we move on, because I know we don't have a lot of time left. Can we tomorrow not ask all Texas Oklahoma questions? Can we please? Like I love you guys. I'm a native Texan. I'm from the Lone Star State. Shut up. Just shut up.
They're literally
Brian Kelly's. I didn't really watch them except last year when we played Alabama or when they played Alabama.
I don't know who it was that asked Lane Kiffin, but he's basically asking, like, how do you feel like they're going to compete? I'm like, he's not their coach. I mean,
they don't even play
yet. It's just like, why are we doing this? So to your point, Lane Kiffin, this is a great segue. Let's talk about him again. The opening statement was not 17 minutes, and Lane's a guy that it's really interesting. He's very dry, but if you pay close attention, he's sending a message. I feel like Lane, guys, has gotten to this point of this, and bear with me while I explain this. He's kind of got that Steve Spurrier vibe to him, especially with this year's team, where Spurrier, he'd have these great Florida teams, or from 10 to 13 with South Carolina, and in the preseason, he's like, well, we'll see if we throw it around a little bit. If we catch it, we tackle and block. We might be okay. You never know. We'll just see. And that's kind of what Kiffin's like. Kiffin's sandbagging. Kiffin, to me, I understand the pieces have to come together, the portal. When he mentioned that, he's mentioned that all offseason. He mentioned rat poison, which was absolutely classic. But, Dave, you and I talked late last week. if you gave him truth serum, like I think it's almost a better sign for Ole Miss that he's sandbagging. I think it's a good sign for them because I think Lane Kiffin knows how damn good his football team is. He's not going to say anything to get in the way of the potential victories they have upcoming. So that's what I took away. And again, and I thought it was interesting, guys. I had the opportunity to ask Lane Kiffin a question in the big room, which was awesome, and asked him about Pooh Paul Jr. And in typical Lane Kiffin fashion, he's just so blunt and honest. He's like, it's kind of like in the NFL when you play a team and you see a player on the other team that's really good that you really like, and you wait until they become a free agent. He's like, we just waited till Pooh Paul became a free agent. We went and got him. I was like, okay, that's simple enough.
To be fair to you, the Arkansas guy piggybacked off your question.
I know, he did.
And Lane avoided that question. He did not want to speak about it.
Yeah. Anyways, what'd y'all take away from Lane Kiffin? I mean, obviously, again, a guy that a little bit dry in nature. Lane is who he is, but certainly a lot to take away there.
I think a little bit he was a little bit more reserved, and I think some of that's probably he just lost his dad on Thursday. You can tell when he got on the SEC network, he was very I liked my dad. People all talked about him. He was set with the equipment students down there, assistant video guy. People liked him. I appreciate my father for being a good person, not just a football coach. So you could tell, I don't know, that was a way you could see it wasn't your normal Lane Kiffin, but I'm with you a little bit. He's a quiet confidence this year. Quiet confidence. Probably going to lean on Coach Saban a little bit with back behind door conversations, just them probably asking for advice on how to handle the team. His biggest challenge is going to be making sure these guys show up to meetings on time, stuff that's not going to get out to the public.
His biggest hurdle, Dave, early is going to make sure his team takes the first 6 weeks of the schedule seriously, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, is Juice Wells or Trey Harris or Jordan Watkins going to be a little upset if their numbers are down? They have a by committee approach at running back now. Are they going to be a little upset? Caden Prescorn ain't really like that kid, but you could there's so many guys, so many weapons they can use on offense. That'll be the issue. Hey, are we showing up to time on our in-season lifts with our strength and conditioning coach? That's something on. I don't know when they work out. They do 3 times a week during the season, most teams, but is it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? I don't know. You just got that's the stuff I feel like it could bleed over to Saturdays. But to your point, Chris, I think everything aligns for Ole Miss this year, dude. Schedule. Offensive weapons. He talked highly about he was very confident in the defense and that depth. I think there's a lot of quiet, like you said, optimism, reserve, playing that, oh, shucks, we may win on Saturday. You're right. I think you're on to something like that. And I think also the guy still taking in the death of his father a little bit, was a little reserved. It'd been interesting to see if Kiffin was on Thursday, how he'd be compared to early in the week.
Right. I personally believe that he believes in the rat poison. I think that is not a bit. I don't think that is him trying to emulate Saban. I think that he has realized before, during his time at Alabama, where they fell down at the last second when he was the offensive coordinator, that he's got to be able to win. I think that he honestly has bought into that. He has seen great teams before crumble under pressure, and he is making sure that this is not a year where they collapse, because they brought it up. You brought it up, Chris. You think about it. This is just such a damn good team. I mean, honestly, if you were to go and put them in any other conference, you would automatically have them as the favorite. You would probably say that they're undefeated regardless of what their schedule looked like. It's just the SEC is a juggernaut, but there's no fault. I mean, they replaced either quality with quantity, or they got better quality at certain positions that they need to upgrade. And so now they feel like a roster that it's no longer, and I've said this before, you can't go to the playoff. That's off the table. It's expected at this point in Oxford. It's winning games in the playoff. It's going further. It's advancing, showing that if we were a 4-team unit, we still would have been in the dance before an Alabama, before a Texas. We're not ready to play second fiddle. And also, this might be the last dance for a lot of us. We may not be in the situation next year. It's hard to do this at a consistent basis wherever you are, specifically in the likes of college football. I got to make sure that this team is well prepared. And I think that mental aspect is legit. And maybe it is a bit, maybe it is something that he plays into, like Spurrier, like, well, golly shucks, we know that we're going to be good. It's like, yeah, maybe. But you know what? I think that he's completely honest in saying, I want to be able to say that I was able to get this far and not have to rely on Saban, not have to rely on other places, not have to rely on just scheduling, voting well in my favor. I am good enough to be here. My team is good enough to be here. I'm coached well enough to be here. I'm not letting any outside noise to factor that. But to your point, Chris, if there was a preseason in all of college football, Ole Miss has it the first 6 weeks. And you cannot look dreadful during those times. And I mean, you cannot look even remotely bad, because if there is a 10-2 squad that is sitting on the outside looking in, Ole Miss got that prime candidacy to not be big enough to find their way into the dance.
And from Cole Thompson, Dave Shumate, myself, to Coach Kiffin, the rat poison's going to keep coming, so you might as well just get used to it, because I'm not changing my tune on Ole Miss anytime soon with that roster and that schedule for sure. Guys, finally, Clark Lee, our final coach of the day. Admittedly, guys, I was live on Texas Sports Unfiltered during Clark Lee's comments. So, Dave, I'm going to kind of lean on you here. I mean, was there anything – I guess for Clark Lee, again, another coach, seat is warming. It's tough, because we talk hot seat, but what are the expectations in Nashville? Like, I hear everybody say, Dave, like, we need to see a sign of life. We need to see something. What is that something we need to see? Like, I don't think you can say, well, we need to see them make a bowl game. They need to win an SEC game before anything. Your takeaways from Clark Lee, and do you feel like he addressed sort of the fact that, maybe they've got to show something in 2024?
Cole was right. I think he probably did go the second longest just off the top of my head. But, I mean, I think he hit on stuff. I thought it was pretty interesting. You go in self-admittedly. Sometimes at Vanderbilt, you're like, oh, here we go. Really hadn't been real excited since James Franklin. Derek Mason had some moments. But I would say for Clark Lee, for the most part, talked about, hey, like, we're getting our NIL stuff going. He's not going to throw his president and AD under the bus up there. So he complimented them, talked about his new hires at strength and conditioning coach, raved about that, said they added more muscle mass. They've gotten stronger. They're faster when they do their GPS stuff. So he's like, we've gotten better from that standpoint. I forget who his former strength coach was, but this guy came over from Georgia Southern, was with Clay Helton. I think he worked with Clark Lee at Notre Dame from 18 to 20 when I was looking it up, because I was wanting to see where he came from. Then he talked about, we've talked about it on here, bringing in Tim Beck, not Coastal Carolina Tim Beck, but New Mexico State Tim Beck, bringing over quarterback Diego Pavia over there. I think we're all going to be fired up about that. I think he was fired up about that. So he kind of hit on that a little bit. They're changing offensive schemes. They're going to be a little bit more spread option, maybe a little closer to triple option. I think Pavia could end up being their leading rusher. It's going to be different than when A.J. Swan was there. And then he talked about him taking over the defense. He's going to be the defensive coordinator. I feel like he wants hands-on, all hands on deck. If we're going down with the ship, it's going to be under my decisions. And he's felt like he got closer with the players. I mean, overall, I thought he did as well as he could. I thought the best question of the day was towards him. I forgot who did it. I would like to say the guy, but asked him how they're going to handle the defensive communication in the helmets. And he's like, we're still going to have to signal, because these hurry up, no huddle, up tempo teams are going to get the ball snapped by 15 seconds, like Josh Heupel them. I think that'll be a good question to ask Heupel on Wednesday. Tomorrow. Ask Heupel tomorrow about that. Are they going to still signal? Or are they going to still try to go up tempo? So it'll be interesting for that. But overall, Clark Lee did a good job. But to answer your question, what is success? He mentioned the goal to the bowl game. Let's win a couple SEC games. I mean, I don't know if they beat. I'm not overly confident they beat Georgia State and Dell McGee in them in the first year. But if I had to give a confidence level in a conference game they could win, it's got to be that home game against South Carolina. It's got to be, right? I mean, their schedule's pretty difficult. That's the only time I see it's on the road. I don't think they're going to win that game. But if there was one, I'd probably have to say it's when South Carolina and Shane Beamer, speaking of him earlier, come to Nashville.
Cole, really quickly, give me your thoughts in a minute. I got radio at 5:20. I apologize. I don't mean like butt out of here, but yeah. Clark Lee, Vandy, go.
I don't think that we don't even need to go into too much detail. Dave hit almost everything on the head, but we are going to be a company that says names right, because we are not going to fall into the Nico Iamaleava trap. It is Diego Pavia. Pavia is going to be a superstar. We did a video talking about him not too long ago. I think he is going to keep this offense moving. I think it's a great idealism to be able to have Tim Beck already as his head coach. I mean, to have him as OC once again. And I do think that having somebody call the defense that knows it and is going to have to answer a lot of questions similar to other head coaches in the past on offense, it's a big win. I don't know if that's going to translate immediately to wins, but that will at least give you an answer on what direction you are seeing progression or regression underneath Clark Lee, who prides himself on being a defensive-minded coach.
Pavia.
Get it right. Next superstar.
Nico Iamaleava. That's it. Exactly. And then Diego Pavia. We got it, guys.
Pavia. Yeah, that's it. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Again, that's going to do it for day one for us for SEC Media. Again, the content doesn't stop just for this segment. Make sure you follow along. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out via podcast. Again, we're all across social media. And, of course, our website, secunfilter.com. Follow Cole Thompson. Follow Dave Shumate. follow myself. And again, stay tuned for all the content as well. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. We'll be back here around same time tomorrow, breaking down day 2. We got 4 more great coaches, great players. Again, it's a great time to be the official kickoff to the 2024 college football season in Dallas, Texas. Until then, guys, take care. Appreciate you all. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.